What's up? Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking you through kind of my process that I used to pick my undergrad and master's programs and how I tailored my associates and bachelor's to really go into my master's to the full. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Martha Hall. I am a 30-year-old Olympic style rifle shooter, and I have a longer than average college career because I started college at 15 as a dual enrollment student at the community college in my hometown. So if you don't know what a dual enrollment student is, I took high school and college courses at the same time and ended up graduating with my associates with only one semester outside of high school. So I graduated high school May of 08 and I got my associates December of 08. And then from there, I transferred to NC State University, where I spent another 3.5 years. And the process to transfer from a community college to the university was way simpler and way easier than having to go through the standard freshman application process, for sure. But once I got into state, I ended up manipulating that program to its full potential in order for me to go into a master's program at the University of New Mexico. I pretty much started tailoring my undergrad studies a year after starting because I'd already pretty much picked my grad program and knew what courses would serve me best for continuing my education. So I'm going to kind of walk you through kind of the nitty-gritty things to look at when it comes to programs. This is going to be a lot of information, but if you take the time to go through it, you will probably realize, what kind of things you're really interested in and what kind of programs you're really drawn to over just general titles of programs, such as like business or engineering. It's like you'll be able to dig down a little bit deeper and figure out which programs are going to suit you best, if you even need to go to the extent of getting multiple degrees, or maybe you don't need a degree at all. So let's get started. All right, so let's walk through how I found and decided on a college major, and hopefully this will help you guys out. So we're going to go through figuring out topics, programs, and then looking into specific courses in order to pick the perfect program for you. So for your topic of study, you have to start somewhere, but this doesn't have to be your final decision. It's more so just like, find like your top 5 interests that you'd be interested in spending like 40 hours a week doing, whether that be in the sciences, such as engineering, arts, Englishes, histories, outdoors, environmental, whatever it may be. Figure out some like top 5 things that you think you would enjoy doing as a career, as a starting point, and then we can start digging into those. So once you have your kind of top 5 interests, look into what kind of jobs are available in those areas. You also need to consider if you like working in an office, behind a computer all day, more outdoors, more of a mix, because that will impact your job choices as well. And when you figure out some of those jobs, look into what kind of degrees they are looking for or that you need in order to pursue that kind of career. If you're trying to teach anywhere from like high school up through college, you're going to need anywhere from a master's to PhD to post PhD work. Trades, most of them don't require any sort of degrees or certifications, but some, encourage you to get certificates or associates. Most are on the job training for trades. Federal jobs, if you want to move up, you will eventually end up getting a master's. Even if you start out in the federal system with an associate's or a bachelor's, you'll end up getting a master's at some point if you keep progressing. And things like park rangers require specific undergrads programs in order to even be considered for those kind of positions. So just kind of look into what you would enjoy doing and kind of think a few years down the line if you think you want to get into management or not, and kind of go from there in terms of, do you think you will have to go up, will you need an associate, a bachelor's, master's, and so on. When you're looking at programs, it's good to understand that undergrad programs are going to be way less specialized because you have to take so many general ed classes. All your PEs, your basic math, your Englishes, no matter what your major is, your languages, you have to take all of the at least basic courses to be a well-rounded student. So you have less time to actually do more specific work. And it's also a good time to explore different majors and stuff as well. Just know that if you end up having to change majors, it is going to take you longer to complete a degree. Masters are more focused with different options for completing a master's, from comps, theses, and projects. Comps are basically just big tests at the end of your master's program that you have to pass in order to be declared a degree. A thesis project is just a massive project that you have to usually spend a year or two working on. Most theses are at some point published works as well, or you have slightly different master's programs that involve smaller projects but more class time. So there are different options with master's programs. PhD programs are extremely specific programs, and you are most likely working on white paper published research projects. So if you have already narrowed down your colleges due to sports or preferences, for like you want to stay in state or whatever, you can go on and start searching programs in your topic areas at those specific schools. If you have not narrowed it down, go on and just start Google searching undergrad programs in whatever topic area you're looking for and see what programs you can find. So when you actually track down some of those programs, what you'll need to look at, or it's very helpful to look at, is the semester by semester plan for each program you think you might like. So it's basically a breakdown of their recommended order of taking classes on how things will fit in and when things are normally offered, especially when you have a bunch of prerequisites that you have to take before your upper level classes. So this is not set in stone. You can move things around as long as you have these specific prerequisites. And it is also possible to sub out certain classes with advisor approval. And you can also take them in different orders possibly as well. I had a grad class when I was going for my master's that it was technically the third class for my program, but because I came in with a bunch of experience that was basically needed for that class, my director allowed me to take that class before the prerequisites, and I did perfectly fine in that class. So some of these, if you have very specific experience or something, you might be able to take in a different order, but undergrad, you're much less flexible than grad school. But in terms of, when you take your electives and stuff, that's really flexible, and certain things can be moved around if they're not prereqs for anything as well. It'll also change if you have AP credit, or if you did something like dual enrollment, or you did some community college courses coming before going to a four-year university. And you also don't have to take 15 to 16 hours a semester. That's what most of them will lay out in their semester plans, because that's about the only way you can graduate in 4 years if you come in with no extra credit, is if you take 15 to 16 hours a semester. 12 hours is considered full-time for undergrad students. So for financial aid and athletics, you just have to stay at the 12-hour mark. I personally only took 12 to 13 hours a semester because I could not take more than that. The one semester I attempted to take 15 or 16 hours. I ended up having to drop a class because I was failing 2 classes. So I dropped the one I was failing worse at and was able to pass everything by the end of the semester. But just know that you don't have to take 15 to 16 hours a semester if you were not comfortable doing that. You can take some courses over summer session as well to drop that semester load for fall and spring, or come in with extra credits. So now we're going to you need to look at the individual courses themselves. And the best option for that is the course catalog for each institution you're looking at. So I would mainly focus on looking at the core program courses, because those are the things that you're really going to school for. And if they're not teaching you things you want to learn, then it's not necessarily the best program for you. Also, looking at the amount of, math and physics, Englishes, free electives, and all that is also kind of a play as well, because if it has like almost no free electives, it's all specific coursework, you're not going to have much chance to explore other interests that you might have, such as if you wanted to take extra language classes or get a minor in something. It's going to be really hard to fit all that in if you have very few free electives. So the course catalog is going to give you a kind of a general description of the course. It's also going to tell you what your co-requisites and prerequisites for each course, and also when it's typically offered, such as this MES 100 is normally offered fall, spring, and summer, so you could throw that one in the summer, whereas your ES 111 has a co-requisite of ES 100 but is only offered in the spring. So it's a juggling match. Co-requisite means that you take them at the same time, whereas a prerequisite is something you have to take before you're allowed to take the next class. So if we look at this ES 300 class, Energy and Environment, you have to have a prerequisite of a Chem 101, a physics class, or one of the other 2 physics classes. And that one's only offered in fall and spring. Or if you look at that 400 class, the ES 400, you have to have the ES 100, 200, 300, and be a senior. So making sure you understand how the prerequisites work, especially if you're trying to rearrange the semester course schedule, is really important, so that you can hit all of your prerequisites without, endangering having to spend another year because you missed one. So once you have a good idea of what, the course in general entails, I personally like going to the bookstore website. Like, I'm going to order books for those classes and then take a look at which books or materials are required to be bought. I did this mainly for my Englishes and literature classes, because I was trying to take the least amount of reading possible, just because it was extremely hard for me to get through that kind of material with my dyslexia. So I was trying to pick courses that were more that would work better for my learning style. So I was trying to, figure out how much reading material, and also I also looked up some of the like math textbooks and Googled them to see like what topics were covered and kind of get a leg up on my next semester kind of work so I could start, getting an idea of the topics beforehand. And it's really good to look at if you're trying to figure out if it's classes you would like to take in, those kind of topic areas. But also the bookstore is not going to give you a complete list because a lot of instructors will give you material either online or in class that you have to read, or they'll give you other reading assignments that you have to find the material for. So it's not a foolproof way to figure out everything that is required for the class, but it gives you a better idea than nothing. So another thing you can do if you're trying to decide on a specific program and you're concerned about, you need to swap out some courses, or the normal course offerings, won't work for your athletic schedule and so on, you can talk to the advisors for the program. Best thing to do is pretty much every school has a campus directory, and you can search the program that you're looking into, and you will find the contact information for at least someone in the program, whether that be an academic advisor or a coordinator or someone in the program that should be able to answer your questions, or you can schedule a meeting with or just email back and forth with. They're very helpful for if you're trying to, especially if you're trying to rearrange it to fit a specific need of your coursework. So once you have your program kind of figured out, the next thing to do is to pick your college, which is centered around your program because you're going to school for your degree, not just for athletics. The next thing you're going to look at is the location and size of the school. A lot of people, this is important. Some people want to go to really big schools, and some people don't want to go to big schools. Some people want to stay close to home, others don't care. So just understanding that the location and size of school does play a big part in picking your college. In-state and out-of-state is also going to play a big role, whether you realize it or not, because it heavily impacts the cost of attending that school. In-state tuition is normally cheaper, not always, depending on the school. I have heard of a few schools that the in-state tuition is as much or more than out-of-state because they want higher grade students, so they give out-of-state students a tuition break. So just realize that a lot of the time in-state tuition is actually going to be way cheaper, and it's just something to keep in mind. And if you can qualify for in-state, most places it's the better option. Also, the financial aid options. If it is a private school over a public school, you're going to be paying more for private, and you're going to have less financial aid options. If you're getting a really good scholarship for either athletics or academics, it may not matter, but it does impact your financial aid options as well as being in-state or out-of-state. If you're going into it for sports, definitely make sure you fit the team dynamic. Coaches are really good at that. Also, make sure that the coaching staff is someone that you respect and jive with, and that they will help you become the best athlete possible, but always, take school first. So once you've compiled all this, looked into your programs and your cost and the teams and all that, you should have a really short list of schools that you want to apply for. I personally only applied for one school for undergrad and master's each. because I'm like, I knew I qualified for everything, and that's the schools I wanted to go to, and I didn't have any problems. There's nothing wrong with having backup schools, but if you do all of this, you should have a really good chance at being selected for your, top schools. So some of the ways to strengthen your applications for freshman applicants, AP classes, college classes, all the extracurriculars you can do, especially in the field of study you're trying to go into, extremely helpful. And also the volunteering in the areas that your program is in. Having good ACT scores, and sports scholarships. If you're really good at your sport, you can, it will help you a lot get through the freshman application process. Also, if it's a very competitive program, talk to the advisor and at that school in that program and ask them how you can strengthen it. And you can also, it puts your name in their mind. So if your stuff looks really good and you've already talked to them, they know that you really want to go there, you're more likely to get accepted into the program, especially if you're looking at master's and PhD programs. That is extremely important. So the way I ended up going from community college to four-year university was as a transfer student. I finished my associates. You don't have to, you just need to, between 30 and 60 hours of college credits at most universities. And you can get all of your gen ed out of the way for cheaper. And their classes are sometimes not easier, but they're smaller. A lot of the general ed classes at four-year university, you're looking at 200 to 300 people in one class, whereas at community colleges, you're looking at 20 to 50 people in a class for the most part. So if you do better with smaller class sizes, you can get all of those general ed classes out of the way in, at the community college. And also with transfer students, you don't necessarily need standardized testing, the ACT or the ACT. It just depends on the university and how you're transferring in. I personally didn't need them in order to transfer in. The only reason I took the SAT was for the NCAA in order to compete. So things to remember, you can always change your program. You're never locked into anything. The only thing is, remember, you will probably end up being in school longer if you have to change your program. And if you're changing your program more than once, really consider like why you're changing it super heavily, because you can definitely be a lifelong student for the wrong reasons. Remember that if you're going to school for the degree and not just to be an athlete. If you're going to just compete as an athlete and you are just getting a degree that means nothing to you and you end up having to go back to school, it was really just a waste of your time and energy to get that degree. And one thing is, if you're planning on continuing to a master's, you should basically apply the same steps. And really, if you can figure out that you're going to get your master's as early as possible, you can tailor any of those gen ed classes to fit your master's program way better. And the nice thing is, you'll at least have, even if it's like a 100 or 200 level course, you'll have a better understanding of a more advanced course later on in your master's program if you take those basic courses first. So for me, I took some extra GIS classes that was able to fit into my gen ed classes, which helped me tremendously in my master's program. So, kind of planning for the future allows you to really make the most out of your degree programs. So I know that was a lot of information. Kudos to you for making it through. And if you paid attention, you can really apply everything I talked about to your individual situation and really take the time and figure out the program that's really going to be the best for you at where you're at right now. Another thing you can also do is talk to people that are in the field that you are interested in, but also don't get caught up in going through the same programs that they went through, because programs are changing every year. I was the last person to graduate with my degree from NC State because no one else wanted to get into it because it was too hard. And they completely revamped that program after I graduated. So, it's good to talk to people in the field and see what programs they went through, but realize the program that they went through is probably not the same as it was when they went through it. But it is a great starting point for sure. So I also wanted to point out that depending on your interest, you may not need college education. If you're planning on going into like upper management or something at some point, and that's something you really want to do, it'd be a good idea to have some sort of degrees. But some jobs do not require any sort of post-high school education. You have to graduate high school, but you're not necessarily required to have any sort of education. If I had found trades in high school, truthfully, I probably would have gotten like a certificate at like the community college level and then gone into utilities and not even gotten a bachelor's or a master's. So just realize if it's more hands-on work stuff, that good chances you probably won't need higher education to get into those fields and to succeed in those fields. So I hope you got something out of this video, and this will help clear up some of the confusion that you might have in picking a college program or major or school or anything like that. Just help you get the information you need to make the most informed decision for you. Thank you for watching, and if you like this video, please subscribe, like this video, and if you have any other topics that you would like me to make videos on, please leave them in the comments below or send me a DM on my social medias.